The stream. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Trent, and I see we have some people in the chat already here. Big Book Cafe, hello. MTM, glad to see you again. Two Steps Away, welcome back. Teak, glad you're here. Sorry to hear about your wrist. Hope it gets better soon. Never done that myself, but sounds kind of painful. I see some people saying where they're from. New Jersey, 2 steps away. Big Book Cafe, Florida, cool. Yeah, I'm also on the East Coast in Massachusetts. I guess a little bit north of you guys. And it's pretty awesome weather today. I was off. I wasn't streaming last week. I was further north in New Hampshire, but today I'm back home. So happy to be back here streaming. And yeah, hopefully fall's kind of more of my preferred season, and the weather is a little bit nicer here in New England area. So glad you're all here today. Hi Hector, thanks for joining. So for those who are new, usually for these live streams, I start off with a main topic and I just kind of talk about it for about maybe 20 minutes or 30 minutes or so, depending on the complexity of it. And then I'll go and I'll answer other questions from my videos throughout the week. But certainly if you have any questions on the main topic, like as I'm going over it, you can ask. And then if you have other random stuff you want to ask, you can ask in the Q&A session at the end. Been having some problems with my mouse cursor lately, and I'm hoping it's somewhat solved. It kind of randomly jumps sometimes. I changed the battery to try to fix it, and I'm just kind of hoping that's it. Maybe I have to reinstall my drivers or something. I did see a question recently. There was like an Affinity update to like 2.5.5, I think it is now. So I did that, and as far as I know, I think it's just a minor bug fix release, so I don't think there's anything major to really talk about there. Just in case some people were wondering about that. That's the version I'm on now, but I think it was like this week or something. And yeah, so we can start with the main topic here. And I thought I'd talk about halftones today. I made some videos about it this last month, and I made a couple other videos about it throughout the last year or so. And I thought it'd be kind of cool to just review a lot of the concepts of it. So let's start with that. I'll scroll over. These are kind of the topics I wanted to go over. And if you're not sure what a halftone is, I gave a little example here. You can see it's this dot pattern. And it's really kind of popular in the sense that it used to be, well, it probably still is, the way we do a lot of printed material. So that's the way we get different colors and different effects. Like if you look at the newspaper, I don't know how it's done these days, but if you zoom in really closely with a magnifying glass, you used to be able to see the different CMYK circles all on top of each other. And these days, it's not strictly necessary on your screen, but a lot of people like that effect because it's kind of like a retro thing. And like many of these things, it's not needed these days, but people just like it because it looks like something the way things used to be, like lens flare and all these other things that used to be bad that we wanted to get rid of. Now we want to try to recreate them digitally so our artwork doesn't look so computerish and fake. So these are the topics we'll go over today. Most of it is with Affinity Photo because that's where the halftone filter is, but I'll talk a little bit about Affinity Designer at the end. There's a couple of tricks you can do to fake it and some kind of stopgap measures you can take because it's not strictly supported there. So let's get into the first example here. Hi, Segmentera. Thanks for joining. So I just selected this random image here. Seems like a good candidate for halftone. Now the halftone I'm in Affinity Photo here, by the way, in case it wasn't clear. Affinity Photo. And there's two main ways you can apply the halftone filter. And we've talked about this a little bit in the past. There's this filter method up here where you have all these options. And this is pretty good, but one of the issues with these options up here is that they're destructive. So they're going to permanently alter your image. So if I select, I believe it's under colors, halftone. Okay, so I can select the halftone filter. I'll click this. And you can see we get the message about it rasterized our image layer. And if you're kind of unsure about what's going on there, check out my stream. I think it was the last stream I did. I also published a video recently called Pixels versus Image Layers. And it's about this difference about pixels and image layers and rasterization and all that kind of stuff. Kind of explains the differences. But usually if you can get away with it, you don't want to rasterize your images. But this is the basic halftone control here. I'll go over it a little more depth in a couple minutes, but let me just apply this. And I applied the halftone filter here. And what you can see is it's basically a permanent effect. Like once I applied it, I can't go and change this anymore. And I can't get back my original image. I can't toggle it on and off. So let me undo this. The better way to use filters, if you can, is to use the live filters over here. So that's this, looks like an hourglass. I guess it's probably like a funnel or something like that. So a lot of the filters are actually supported on the live filters here. So here we can see there is a halftone. I guess I scroll down. There's a halftone filter here. So a lot of these filters up here that are destructive are supported non-destructively on the live filters, but not all of them are. But the halftone is, so we'll use it there. Now I say non-destructive, what does that mean? Well, let me show you the difference between the previous scenario. If I apply the halftone filter this way, I'll do the color so it looks the same. And I'll just close this. Now you can see this halftone filter is added as a child to my image over here. And I can actually toggle it on and off, so I didn't permanently lose my image. I can turn it on, I can click it, and I can change the settings. So I can just do I can modify it if I want later on. I'm perfectly free to delete it. You know, I can make all these other changes with it. So that's kind of the benefit of doing things with the live filter method. So let's look at some of the controls for the halftone filter. Let's kind of explore it a little bit. As you probably saw right in this example, there's a color version and there's a black and white version. So the way I did that is you'll have this screen option here. So we have the black and white, which is the monochrome. We also have the color option, so you can do a color halftone. So if we zoom in, you can see, I believe it's essentially going to be CMYK, RGB, and black colors mixed together. That's kind of the thing. So CMYK is cyan. So if might be hurting your eyes, but you know, this is cyan, yellow, magenta. CMYK is black, and RGB is going to be your red, your green, and your blue. So those are the main colors. And I guess white also, if you want to consider that as a color. And these are going to kind of combine to give you the illusion of other colors. And this is what I was talking about earlier. When you look at old newspapers with a magnifying glass, look at some type of color image up close, you see this kind of thing. So that's the color option. We also have the line option. Let me zoom out so you can see it. The line option. So it's another type of halftone. We're just going to draw lines across and kind of create that effect. And then the last one is circular. Yeah, so get a circular thing going. I haven't used these two bottom ones that much. The main one I use is monochrome. And actually, that's probably the one we're going to be talking about 99% of this video today. So I'll select monochrome. Now, we also have this concept of cell size. Move this over, make this bigger. So the cell size, you can see these little dots. That's essentially how big the dots are. And it can be kind of tricky. You kind of want to play with this a little bit to see like what gets you the best effect. If you go too big, you don't really know what your image is anymore. If you go too small, it's kind of hard to see what's going on. And I'll put it about there right now. We also have this contrast option. And if I dial it all the way down, it's kind of about, you know, how much of the original image is showing through versus if I go all the way to the extreme for the contrast. Now we're just getting solid black and white halftone pattern. So if I zoom in here, you can see everything is just pure black and white when I'm at 100% contrast. But if I dial it down, it starts to actually put in the original image again. So this is kind of like a cheating halftone, if you will. Like it's still kind of having the original image behind it with a little bit of a blurry halftone in front of it. But you know, it's good for creating that effect. And let's see. Some of these are different ones for the color. They're only enabled for the color options. They're kind of a little more niche. I won't go over those too much. But I think one of the interesting ones for monochrome, let's sharpen it up a little bit, is the angle. So I can change the screen angle. And that's going to change kind of the pattern of how the dots are going. So you can kind of see they look a little more diagonal now that I have it at 45 degrees. And if I turn it this way, it's going to depend on your cell size and your contrast and all that, but you can get kind of a different effect going. And one that I forgot to mention, kind of an obvious one, is the dot pattern itself. So if I select this one, you have two options here, cosine and round. Round is kind of the easiest one to understand. So if I click this, and I zoom in, you can see literally the dots are all just round. It's just going to choose circles of some size. Hi, IH. Hope things are going well over there in Germany. And the cosine one, if I click this, you can see, let me increase the contrast. It's a little more diamondy in some cases. I don't know the exact math formula. I mean, I guess it's something based on cosine, of course. But the shape is going to vary a little bit here. Whereas if I use the round method, it's going to be dots. In cosine, you're going to get a combination of like dots and squarish diamonds and things like that. So that's the basic controls and how they work here. Now, something you may notice sometimes when you do this, you may get like kind of strange patterns that show up, like here. Like it may be difficult to, on the stream, this might not be showing up, but like if I look here, I can see all these like little things. Like look at how it's making almost like a square or something like that. And this is kind of just it's not really how it looks, but that's what's called a Moir pattern, or more, I don't know the exact pronunciation, but it's kind of this effect where something has a lot of dots or a lot of lines and you view it at different resolutions and it looks kind of strange. You kind of see these patterns showing up. Let me show you the Wikipedia article on that. If I show you the effect, you'll know exactly what it refers to. Yeah, this. So when you're working with halftones, you'll probably get this effect a lot. You know, if you ever like twisted two screens in front of each other, you get these kind of crazy shadows that appear there. This kind of thing happening here. So when you're working with halftones, you know, zooming in and out, you'll see this type of thing a lot. So I kind of recommend, you know, looking at things at different zoom levels to see what it really looks like. It might just be an illusion. It might not really be how it actually shows when you export your image file. So these are the kind of things to keep in mind. Yeah, if you ever had like two screens and you put them in front of each other, that'll happen. If you're interested in math, you can have some fun evaluating that. But yeah, so I mean, I think these are, yeah, this is a good example of this. You can see your eye is just like naturally assuming lines are there, even though it's not really that different, I guess. And you can see here, we're getting the same effect. You'll get the same effect a lot of times with halftones. Okay, so something to keep in mind there. Let me see something else that happens. Let me make this bigger. Yeah. So one thing, this shows in the color. It shows more in the black and white. We'll see this a couple times here. If I turn this on and off, let me toggle this. Sometimes in Affinity, the edge of the image, it'll kind of, for some reason, go overboard with the halftone effect. You're not seeing it too much in this one, but I think you'll see it more later on. And you want to keep an eye on that. Like, I don't know if it's some bug in the algorithm where the edge of the canvas is just kind of, I don't know if it pulls in black from outside or something like that, but it just doesn't look right. So you may want to keep an eye on that and like crop your images a little bit when you're working with this. And I'll point that out as we go through the examples today, because I think that will be, that'll show up a few times. Let me close this. Let me just show you kind of a basic example of how the patterns work. So let me draw a rectangle here. So if I just showed you an image, so maybe it wasn't really clear like what was going on there. But if I draw a rectangle here, and let's draw a gradient on it. We'll just do white to black. What I can do is I can add the filter to it. So I'll go to the filter. I'll go to the halftone. I'll increase the contrast here. Let's do round. So you can see what's happening here. I'll turn this off. It's kind of how the halftone works, is that it's going to give you bigger and, I guess, more dense dots in the dark areas. So if I turn off the halftone, down here you can see it's very black. Down in the bottom area, it's very, you know, obviously dark and black down there. So if I turn the halftone on, the dots are going to be very thick and dense. As I go up higher, they're less dense because it's white. So I'll turn this off. This is where it's going to be fewer and smaller dots. And by the way, this is a really good example of what I just said about this bug, where on the edge, we're getting these dots here for some reason. I don't know why that happens. Like, theoretically, it shouldn't. I wonder if I drag the rectangle off the canvas, yeah, that helps. So maybe in this case, you want to just make if you were going to do a gradient like this to cover your whole canvas, you would pull it off a little bit like that. And sometimes, yeah, the zoom level may affect it a little bit too. So this is how the pattern is working. So here we have a linear gradient. We're just doing it in a line. We could also do a radial gradient. So I could take where is that option? I have to select the gradient tool. Then for type, so this is linear, I could do radial. And I can move it here. And if we turn on the halftone, now we have a circular halftone. And the nice thing about these live filters is that they dynamically adjust as you change your gradient. So if I move this in here, it's quite nice how it just automatically will update as I move things around. I can change if you see the gradient tool, there's a half point marker in there. I can drag that around and it can change. I can click a point here. I can make this gray or something. So we have all sorts of, it's very dynamic in how it acts there. Something to keep in mind is, let's do solid white and solid black. This was something that tripped me up a couple days ago because I forgot about it. Hi, Michael from Switzerland. Thanks for joining. So let me do a solid black rectangle. So I'll add a halftone filter to this solid black. I'll call it solid black. I'll click the live filters. I'll select halftone. And nothing really happens. And this is kind of what we saw before. If you have a solid black rectangle and you apply a halftone to it, nothing is going to go on. If I make it some type of gray, actually, let me do the round one. A solid gray is just going to have an even halftone pattern. So this is my rectangle. If I turn on the halftone, it's going to be a solid gray. And I can change, the lighter the gray, the smaller the dots are going to appear. So I'm sliding the colors over here. So my gray is really light. This is my light gray. The halftone dots are small and far apart. And when I go darker, they get thicker and closer together. So this is how the halftone reacts to lights and darks. Like I said, if I go to full black, it's just going to be solid. So if you're trying to get a halftone on a full black image, some full black element, you're not going to see much. You're going to have to make it grayer. And if you go fully white actually gives like a little bit of a dot there. You can kind of see these elements. I don't know if you can see, I don't know if it's showing up on stream, but they're little pixel dots. So it does show there, but I guess theoretically they shouldn't show there. So that's the kind of the theory of how halftones are working with values. Now usually you're going to be using, I shouldn't say usually, but quite often you'll be using a photo, which is a more complex organization of values. So let's look at another example here. So one thing that halftones are very sensitive to is, as I just said, the lights and darks. And it's really going to depend on the contrast in your image, how good a halftone effect you get. But you can actually change the contrast to improve the halftone. So what I'll do here is I have this image, and let me apply the halftone. So I'll click halftones here. And you can see, I'll do round. It's kind of hard to get it to look much different. So if I zoom in, there's not a lot of change here. It's not showing the eyes very well and that type of thing. So let's turn this off. One thing I can do is add more contrast to this to bring out the halftone more. Okay. So one of the ways to add contrast is to use a curves adjustment. Now, I've made a couple videos on curves adjustments, but that's an adjustment down here, the adjustments. And I know curves, sometimes they scare people because they look confusing, but really I'll show you like the easiest way to use them. So I'm going to select curves here. And as I've said before, like left to right is the blacks to brights in your image. So these are the darks over here, and these are the lights in your image. And then you're just mapping them to outputs. So up and down is also lights to darks. So when we have a perfectly 45-degree angle, we're not making any changes. But when I drag the curve up, all my inputs here, do this point here, is now being raised to a higher value like that. Okay, so everything is being brighter. Okay, whatever this level of darkness is or brightness, it's going higher here. Okay, so this is what the raising of the curves. Whoops, that was a very bad curve. That was a very bad line. It's hard to draw straight with a mouse, but all these are going up like that. So that's what happens when we raise our curves here. And then when we decrease them, we're making it darker, everything is going lower than it would. So these values here are going to the dark level there, okay? So like I said, I have a couple videos on this, but really like 99% of the time what you do with curves to add some contrast is you kind of increase the brights and then you can decrease the darks like that. There's actually not a lot of darks in this image, so it's not really there. But let me turn my halftone back on. And if I move it above the curves, get it in there. I'll get it there. Sometimes I have trouble getting these things in the right place. Let's do this. I guess we could do it this way, it doesn't matter. So notice how the curves adjustment, when I toggle on and off, is actually changing the halftone there. So let me go back to the curve. Let me reset it. If I make it darker, you can see it actually is affecting the halftone. So you don't have to just take what the halftone gives you by itself. You can actually put some other adjustment before it to modify the halftone effect there, like that. Another one you could do is levels. So I'll turn this off. Let's do levels, adjustments, levels. So this is another one where we can like adjust the black level and get some more contrast going there. So as I'm dragging up the blacks, we're getting more, we're increasing the shadows essentially is what we're doing there. We can change the whites if we wanted to. But this is just to show you that you don't have to, if I just use the halftone filter by itself, it wouldn't look good, but you can actually apply other adjustments to it too beforehand. And let's see. One thing that's nice to do, let's, which one looks best? I don't know. Let's do that one. So another thing is, a lot of times you have black and white halftone by default, and maybe you want to change the colors of it. So maybe I don't like this, I like the halftone effect we're getting here, but I don't want to have it be black and white. So there's various kind of ways you can change colors, but I think the easiest way is to use a gradient map. So that's another adjustment here, the adjustments. So I'll click the adjustment, and I'll add a gradient map. I always forget where it is. Here it is. Now at first, the gradient map by itself, it doesn't look that great because it just gives you this red, green, and blue. But what it's doing is it's literally mapping a gradient onto the blacks and whites in your image, or the darks to brights in your image, because it works on color too. But if I toggle this on and off, let's turn it off. We have the black areas here in the hair. If I turn the gradient map on, what it's doing is it's mapping red onto the black areas. I'm drawing red on red, so I know it's hard to see, but let's look at the white areas instead, actually. So here we have some white areas, right? So his face is white. Our gradient map is going to map blue onto the white areas. It's going to take green and put that into like the middle gray areas, and it's going to take red and put that in the dark areas, okay? Now you can see there's not a lot of green here. The only green we're getting is these transitions between the circles. So if I turn this off, like that's kind of gray. Let me just delete the green. So this is essentially what's happening. Red is going to the black and blue is going to the white. Now, like I said, these colors aren't that great, so you can change them to what you want. So on a gradient map, I can take this purple here, and I can, not purple, but red, and I can click it, and I can change it to some other color. So maybe I do want it to be like a dark purple or something. Let's get it like there, maybe. You can always change it later. Yeah, thanks MTM for mentioning that. 40 people, interesting. Huh. And then you can change the bright side also. So maybe you want this to look different. And again, this is like an artistic thing. You can just decide what you like. Maybe I want this to be like a cyan or something, like there. And then maybe I want to tune this again. Let's get this looking like that. And of course, what you could also do is you could crop your image. So let's turn this off for a second. I could select this. I'm just using the selection tool. And then with the image selected, I could mask it out. And I can apply my filters again and have some type of effect going. And maybe this could be part of like some type of composition. Like, I don't know, let's do place. Give it some type of background. Send it to the back. I'll group these guys. Put them in the front. And you know, whoops. Maybe this is some type of like album cover or something. I don't know. Give like a glow effect. So, you know, you could just use this as elements of some other type of thing, you know. But it's very easy to like have have a halftone element, you know, be part of some other type of, you know, design or poster or album cover or something like that. And you could always dynamically adjust it later. So if I wanted to adjust this, I could go to my halftone and I could change it again. And it's, you know, an individual element of the composition. So I'll save that. So that's how you can change the color. As I said, you can use the gradient map there. And again, like later on, if you don't like this color, change it to something else. Maybe you think that looks better or something. So it's a very flexible approach here. Hi, LeBron. Hi, Lori. Good to hear from you. So I'll save this. Now let's look at text. So let's see. Let me write some words here. I'll just say, whoops. So I'm going to use the artistic text tool. So for those of you guys who aren't familiar with text, there's two text options. Artistic text and frame text. Frame text is more for like paragraphs or sentences and paragraphs. Artistic text is more just for a few words, like a logo or a title or something. So I'm going to use artistic text. And I'll create two words. Let's say, I don't know, super. One way I like to type things again is I'll hold Alt and I'll click and I'll just drag and I'll just do another thing like that. Maybe it's not that much faster, but sometimes I just like to do that to make things quicker. So yeah, the font, I like this kind of font here. And one thing, so what we want to do is we want to add halftone inside our text here. And we've talked a little bit in the past about how to add things inside of text. What I like to do is first create like a rectangle here. And I like to make my halftone pattern here and then put it inside the text. So let's look at how we can do that. So I have a gray gradient here. Let's change the color a little bit. Whites and blacks are tones, not colors. Beastie Floyd, yes. Yes, technically, I'd say that's true, probably. And let's see. So, yeah, we can apply the halftone to this. Yeah, I say lights and darks and values and stuff, and sometimes I get those terms mixed up, but let's go light here. Let's go round. And we can always adjust this as we see fit with our gradient tool. So we can always like drag it around if we want different ways. Let's put that a little bit there. So what we can do is we can do our gradient map trick for the color. So let's select this, and I'll do the gradient map. So that's an adjustment. Gradient map. I'll delete the green again. I don't like that green effect. And then, you know, I think good comic colors are like orange, yellow. That kind of reminds me of that type of thing there. So I'll do that. And then to put it inside the text, I'll show you here. It's in this part here. All we really do is just drag our rectangle into our word here. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to drag it and let go over the word. So I'll let go. And it's inside it and it's to the side so you can't see it. So let me drag it over here. And I did hero. And now we have our halftone text. Okay. Let me move the word over. And while it's in there, we can still, if you have the rectangle selected, you can still adjust it. You can make it look better. You can move it around. And then if you want to do it for the super one, as far as I know, the best way is to just duplicate it. So I'll press Control J. And I'll just drag it into the super one here. So it's there, and I'll move it up. And now you can see it's in both of these words. Now a mistake some people sometimes make, let me put this out here, when they drag things into each other, is if I take this, if I drag it, you don't want to drag it over the, let me put it over here. You don't want to drag it over the thumbnail. That's something else. It's a valid operation, but it's probably not what you want to do. So I'll drag it over here. You don't want to have it over the thumbnail. You want to drag it over the word. That'll actually put it inside. So we have that. And then, you know, you could add some type of background image. So this could be like maybe like a comic book cover or something like that. Add some background. I think this is the same image I used for the thumbnail to this video, for the stream. And then if we wanted to apply the same effects to both of these words, we could group them together. And then we could just do it on the group level. So with both of these words selected over here, I'll just press Control G. Then I'll give it some type of outline. So I'll click FX. I don't know if I've done effects in this stream yet. So this is the effects. Sometimes it's confusing, like what's an effect, what's an adjustment, what's a filter. You kind of get the hang of it after a while. There's some duplication between them, especially with the blurs. But I'm going to click the effects here. And I'll just add like an outline. So let's add a black outline. So this is the outline effect. I'll add a black outline. And what you can do is you can add another outline. So you can click this plus here. So I'll say duplicate effect. And they're actually, you see them stacked on top of each other. And this is like a normal stack. So the thing on top might block the thing below it. So the thing below it, I'll make it this obnoxious green just to start. And you'll notice you still don't see it over here. And the reason, let me zoom in. The reason you don't see it is because both of these outlines are the same size. So this bottom outline, I have to make the radius bigger for it to show up. And now you can see it's actually showing up. And now that's showing up, I'll give it a better color. So I'll click that and I'll say white. Then, you know, we can give this whole thing some type of outer shadow. I kind of just randomly drag these up until it looks good. Let's see, maybe a little softer. Yeah. So there we have our text. And as usual, we can always change the colors if we don't like them. We can move the rectangle around. For the gradient map, I can adjust it again over here. So I'll click this. I don't know, maybe I want this one to be purple and teal. Does that look good? Not really, but I'll leave it anyway. So yeah, it's fully editable. So we have this halftone effect inside of text. So that's a pretty easy way to do that effect if you're in Affinity Photo. Now, one thing that a lot of people do is they want to use halftone effects on like t-shirts and things like that. And a lot of times when you have a halftone, you might just want to keep the dots, but you want to keep the area behind it transparent. So let's look at how we can actually do that. And what I'm going to do for this is a transparent image. We have this dinosaur here. It's a pretty cool dinosaur. And I'm going to just add a fill layer behind it so we kind of just know what the difference is between white and black and transparent. So I'll just create a fill layer. Let's give it some type of blue. I'll just put it behind. So we can kind of know what we're looking at. And let's add the halftone effect to this dinosaur here. Halftone. I'll just make it round. That seems to be about a good size. And what we want to do is we want to get rid of the, I guess in this case, we want to get rid of the whites. So we want to keep the dots, but we want to get rid of the whites. Now, one thing we can do is we can actually, if you notice, if you zoom in, you'll notice there's actually grays and stuff. So the outside of our circle is always going to have a little bit of gray there. We can get rid of that with a threshold adjustment. So a threshold adjustment is just going to give us strictly black or white. So here with this background selected, I'll click the adjustments, and then I'll click threshold, which is somewhere here. Here it is, threshold. So I'm going to click threshold. And if I zoom in, you will now notice that it's all just strictly black and white. And this is going to, I can adjust where that cutoff is, so I can do it different ways. And probably as I do that adjustment, I'm going to want to view it like at this level here. So you can put this somewhere to get like the good effect you want. But the important thing is that it's giving us strict black and white. And that's going to be important for our next step here. Now, the way we can actually apply transparency selectively is we can use what's called the blend options. And I believe in Photoshop, this is called like blend if or something like that. You can make a decision, you can give a formula, or you can give a curve to decide when something will be transparent. So let me actually show you it so it's easier to show you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to group both of these together here. Okay, so we have these two adjustments. We can group them. So I'm going to select both of them. I'll press Control G. And that was strange. Let me see. Control G. Just like this. Let's move them up here for a second. See, I'll just do it there. Maybe I have to unlock this. Let's see. Unlock. Okay. Yeah, that's what I was expecting. Okay. That was odd. When I pressed Control G below here, it's like it made it a mask or something. Unless I pressed the wrong button. I didn't know that's how it worked. So this is the effect we wanted. It's just the halftone with the threshold applied. So you can see that we have pure black and white. So what I'm going to do with the group here is I'm going to click this gear icon. So these are our blend options. And once again, I have a video on this where I go into it in depth. It's a little confusing at first how it works, but once you kind of use it, it becomes very valuable here. And the key is when you want things to be selectively transparent. So I'll stop talking about it and I'll click on it. So let's click on this. And the only thing we're going to focus on is the left side right now. So when I say left side, I mean this side here. So what the blend options do is they let us make something transparent based on its value level. So whether it's light or dark. So the easiest way is to just show it here. Right now, everything is fully solid. So up here, the top is solid, the bottom is transparent. If I drag this right part down, you can see now the effect is that we're getting transparency there, okay? So the white is being transparent. And I can dial this up. And we have transparency there, okay? So let me go back to it again. So in case you didn't see that, let me do it again. So we have our black and our white. I'm dialing down the white, and it's becoming transparent like that, all right? So what this is saying is, well, let me do it up. It's saying take the whites and give them 0% opacity. Okay, so this is 0% opacity. And this is 100% opacity. So my blacks are still showing there, okay? And then if you wanted to do the other way, what you could do is you could actually just reverse it. So I could reset this. If I wanted the blacks to be transparent, I would dial down the blacks and keep them there like that, all right? So let me go back to what I had before. So that's how you can like selectively get rid of some of the halftone. Now the question is, why is that still showing? Is it because? Put this up here. Yes, Segmentera, the blend options are definitely very useful. Let me group this together. Yeah, that's... Yeah, I just changed the grouping here. I think this is a little bit better way of doing it. Yeah. So I just rearranged it a little bit to be clearer. So I just took the background here. I applied the adjustments above it. And then I grouped them all together. So the output of this group is, I changed the blend options on the group. So let me reset this. So if you know nothing about blend options, this should make sense based on what we did so far. We have our dinosaur. We applied a halftone to it. And then we did the adjustments, okay? So this is our result. Then on the group, I adjusted the blend options. And what I did is I removed the white. I brought it down like that. So now what would happen is if this background fill wasn't here, we could actually export this to, you know, another PNG. And if we printed this on a surface, it would, you know, these middle parts here would be transparent. Okay, so if this is like a t-shirt or something, say it was a blue t-shirt, you would get this effect going on here. And I guess we could invert that also. So if you wanted it to be white, you know, you could change the color of the black, you know, if you wanted to. So 2 steps away, reading your question. So it acts somewhat like a mask to let color below come through. Yeah, so it's kind of like you're filtering out values. So you're filtering out values, and then yeah, it's going to show what's below. So you're deciding what's going to be transparent. And I made it blue just so you can see through it here. But in reality, probably what you would do is like you would disable this fill layer. And if you zoom in, you can see it's actually transparent all the way through it. So you could export this as a PNG, like a transparent PNG. And if you printed it on a t-shirt or something like that, it would take whatever color is on the t-shirt. And you know, this space in between, you know, this is all transparent in here, of course, all that stuff there. So that's a way you can use a halftone to make, that's how you could use a blend options to make your halftone transparent. Yeah, hopefully that cleared it up. So another example is you can actually kind of create a cool texture effect, which is kind of almost what I just did here before I changed it to transparency. So let's look at that example. So I could take this background here and I could duplicate this layer, assuming I press the right button. So I'll call this our halftone effect. So it's very similar to before. Let me turn off the one behind it. So this is just kind of a simple process. I'll just like click the live filter layer, click halftone, and you know, we can change it to different things, whatever it looks cool, round. And you can kind of like, let me turn on the one behind it. And what you can do is you can just kind of play with the blend options. So if I click normal here, I can do maybe color burn. And you can see, you know, I have my image behind it, but I kind of added on a little bit of a halftone filter there. And you can adjust the transparency. So it kind of adds like a little bit of texture to it. And like I was saying before, let me turn this off. You can adjust the light, you can adjust the contrast in your image to change the halftone effect. So maybe I don't like how it's looking right now. Maybe I want these parts to have less dots or something. So I'll turn this off. If I go to my, which one do I want to do? I'll do levels. I can adjust the levels here. Let's actually turn it back. Let's do it in real time here. As I adjust the levels, it's going to affect, actually it's going to affect it better if I put that above. Yeah. I want the levels to be under it. So as I adjust the levels, it's going to change the way the pattern appears on my dinosaur here, okay? So I can make it so the bright areas don't have a lot of dots and the dark areas kind of do, like that. So this top layer I have levels and then I have the halftone above it. And then I could, let's see, I said color burn. Let me turn the bottom one on. So we have this kind of effect going on. And like I said, you can change the opacity a little bit. And you can play with the blend options as you see fit. Just to kind of, maybe you want like a kind of a comic book feel or something like that. So this is, so before, after, before, after. And you can keep like touching it up a little bit. But really all we did was just create a level above that had this effect here. And we just applied it to the one below it. So it's kind of cool, like maybe if you have an image that's not halftone, but you want to give it a little bit of a halftone texture, you could do this. And the value of copying it like that is that you're getting a halftone that matches your image. So it's putting dense stuff here where there's a certain level of shadow, and over here we're getting dots that are the right size, and it's showing up when we do that there. So it's kind of a cool little trick. Let's look at one more thing in Affinity Photo. I think it's the last Affinity Photo thing, yeah. So I made this video recently about how to do a halftone mask. And I think it's kind of a valuable concept to go over. There's a couple things going on. And this is kind of the final effect we wanted to go for. So let me close these for the time being. Just do some housekeeping. So this is what we want to do. Like, can we use a halftone and create a mask out of it? And I was looking into this, and someone asked this on the Affinity forums too. It was kind of non-trivial, but eventually I got something, so I thought it would be worth showing here. So let's look at kind of some things that don't work. So just to kind of give you an idea of like how this approach goes. So if I have this rectangle here, let's add a halftone to it. I'll just do something like that, I guess. So you may think, okay, I have this rectangle. Let's just make a mask out of it. So I click this, I drag it here, and that doesn't really do what we expect. It doesn't really work that way. There's probably other things I tried too, and it just doesn't, to just use it directly as a mask, it doesn't work. But the other thing you might say is, well, let's rasterize to a mask. Rasterize to mask. It kind of works, but the problem is that it's not dynamic anymore. We can't actually like change the effect. This is what our mask looks like. But what if we want to change the halftone later and have it dynamically update our mask? It doesn't actually do that. So that's not what we want either. And kind of the solution, the ultimate solution is, once again, to use blend options. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this image a little bit smaller. And like we did before, I'm just going to add like a light blue background. So we know what the difference is between transparency and just, part of the white mask. Put this below here. Let's lock it. So let's first create, our shape that we want the mask to be. And it does start with the rectangle. So I'll create a rectangle. Put it on top. And let's just add some type of gradient. White, make it radial, and we can add a halftone to it. So I'll add a halftone filter. It's good enough to start. We can change it later, as you'll see. So the key thing really is, once again, to create a group and to use blend options. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to make a group out of it, and I'm going to use that group as a mask to the person. So I'll put this down here. Now it's still not actually doing anything, but what happens in this situation, and let me just double check, make sure it actually, yeah, so what happens in this situation is that when we use an object like this as a mask, usually masks work on levels of light and dark, but in this situation, when we have an object here, it's about the levels of transparency, okay? So what we're trying to do, again, is take our halftone, and instead of having it be black and white, we're trying to convert it to levels of opacity, so transparent parts and non-transparent parts. So this is going to be very similar to what we just did with making the transparent halftone. So with this group selected here, what's under this group, I don't know if you can actually, yeah. So this is what's in the group. we want to convert this to levels of transparency again. So like I said before, we'll just go to the group, click the blend options, and I believe it was, yeah, it's the black one to be transparent. Yeah, so the black part we wanted to be transparent. And you can see we're getting that effect now. So the black is being transparent because we're suppressing it. And what's happening is our mask, this is what our mask looks like, except the black is transparent, and that's affecting the person image here. So I do have a video on this where I go into it in more detail if it's too confusing now. But kind of the main goal of this is that now we can actually dynamically adjust our halftone here. So if I change the cell size, it's actually affecting it in real time. Okay. And I can also change the gradient. So if I select the rectangle, if I select my gradient tool here, I can actually move it around. And like I don't like the distribution right now. I want to make it more like that. Okay. So we can have this type of effect going on here. Then maybe I want to change the size of the dots again. Like that. Now sometimes what you notice with this is that, I think I showed this in the beginning, you get like these little dots here that maybe you don't want. See these little like blue dots? I don't know if they're showing up on the stream, but sometimes it'd be a little annoying. You can add an additional mask to this. You can add a mask to the halftone filter itself. So I'll click mask here. I'll just drag it on. And live filters act as masks by themselves, but I kind of like to just add an additional mask on it just because it's more visible in my opinion. And then I can like select black. And I can start painting out the parts I don't like. So over her face, maybe I don't want any of these dots to show up. I can click around here and they're hidden. And they'll stay hidden even if I adjust the size. I got partially there. Although it might not fit the new dimensions. Like it might not look good with the new thing. Let me try it. Yeah, they're still there. So that mask is removing the halftone effect. So this is kind of the structure here of how to actually use a halftone to create a mask. We basically we created our halftone effect like you want, and then we put it in a group, and the key thing is just use the blend options to suppress the black part to make them transparent, and that transparency is what's affecting this mask here. So that's kind of one little use case there. So that was the end of the Affinity Photo part. I just want to talk briefly about Affinity Designer because it doesn't currently, as far as I know, have any options for creating a halftone pattern or anything like that. But there's kind of a couple of ways we can fake it. So let me just show you a way we can fake it that I kind of like. So one thing you can do is you can create a dot. So I'll create a circle here. Let me get rid of the outline. So again, this is Affinity Designer in case it wasn't clear that I switched to it. We're in Affinity Designer now. This is the vector program. And I just created a circle here using the ellipse tool. So this is just a circle, and I used the ellipse tool here. And one cool feature of Affinity Designer is that it's called this power duplicate feature. So I'm going to hit enter here, and you see this option. I get these options, and it allows me to duplicate something and scale it or rotate it or do something else with it as I duplicate it. So I'm going to check this box here that says duplicate, and I'll do like, I don't know, 16 copies. And you're not going to see anything initially, but if I adjust this horizontal part here, this is the offset for each additional duplicate. So right now it's 0, but if I click and drag, I can actually make other dots like that. So you can see we can get these dots appearing there. Now the other cool thing, and this is happening because I selected duplicate there, the other cool thing is that we can adjust the scale of each additional dot. So that's this option here. So right now it says 100%. They're all the same size as the original. I can dial down the scale a little bit, and I can actually make them smaller like that. So what I've done here is I've duplicated it 15 times. Each one is being moved 0.92 inches, and each one is being scaled to 93% of the one before it. So I'll click OK. And we have these lines here. And what I can then do is I can go select the whole thing again. And if I press enter, I don't know if I have to group it or not. Let's see. Now I can duplicate it again. Let's do it over here. I'll click duplicate. Let's select 16. Now instead of going horizontal, I'm going to go vertical. So I'll go down this way. And now I can create some more dots going that way. So I'll click OK. And now we have our halftone pattern here. So I can resize it. And of course, if I wanted to do it again, I could change the size. So it's a little less dynamic than Affinity Photo. Like, it's hard to change this. I would have to just go and create it again. But what I did here is if you look at my layer stack over here, it just really created tons of ellipses. So that's really what you're actually doing here. And if you create like a million of them, it's probably going to slow your computer down or something like that. But it is a way you can get a quick effect. So let me see if I can do it again. Let me see if I can do it densely, like across the whole screen here. So to do it again, I create a circle. I'll hit enter. Let's duplicate. And I'll start vertical or horizontal. I always forget which is which. Let's do more. And I'll scale down a little bit. And I guess you could, if you wanted to, you could just you could pull them in really close together like that too, so that they would be dense like that. But I'll have them so they're separated. Click OK. Once again, I'll hit enter. I selected them all. Let's go down. Duplicate a bunch of times. And let's go vertical. Something like that. So I'll select it. I'll group it. And I'll put it down. So this could be used for texture, for like text or something like that. And one of the really cool things is that it works with the warp filters. So these are down here, the warp groups. These warp groups here. So I have these dots selected. I'll click the warp group. And I'll do, I don't know, fisheye. So you can see I can actually bend them around and create pretty cool effects like that. I mean, it's going to depend on what you want to do. And you can always undo it. And these warp groups are non-permanent, so you can always just drag your thing out and delete the warp group. Whoops. Yeah, I'll just delete that. So I could create another one. I could do perspective. So I could do something like that. And you can, of course, change the color. So if I have the group selected, I can change the color like that. I could do a gradient on them. So I'll select the gradient tool down here. It's the gradient tool. Theoretically, you can. Yeah. So I know you can create kind of cool things like that. But the key thing is kind of that power duplicate feature. So you're just kind of faking the halftone effect. The other thing you can do is download vector patterns that have them. If you go to certain sites, I don't know, Creative Fabrica or something, they have SVG vectors. Not SVG vectors, SVG halftones, I should say. Let me show it here. Just searching for it. I don't know why it's not showing up. SVG. Just do halftones. Showing up before. But anyway, you can like this type of thing, vector, gradient, halftone. You can download these types of things, and they might work better if you want more specialized things. But something like this you could almost make yourself based on that technique I just showed you. Although they wouldn't be, they could be scattered too if you did the. There's a way you can do different options for the offsets and things like that. you can play with the rotation, you can play with the distance and all these kinds of things to get different types of effects. So it is possible, but it doesn't currently natively have a halftone filter, which it would be pretty cool if it did, though. I think that's a very common thing in graphic design. But right now, Affinity Designer does not have it. So that's basically the halftone section. What time are we at? 1 hour. Took a little longer than I thought, but yeah, that's kind of some of the basic things you can do with it. There's always more you can do with it. There's more options there. You know, your creativity is really the limit. There's more adjustments you can do to kind of create cool effects and textures and things. So just kind of an overview, like a crash course. So hopefully that was useful in terms of design and this topic. I haven't made a video on that last technique I just showed you, the Affinity Designer one. I think I'll make a quick video on that this afternoon and publish it. So with that, I'll answer your questions from the week on my videos. Let's go down here. So I got this question from Miss Rutwick. She says, is there a way to display fonts by font families in Affinity Designer, like in Illustrator? As far as I know, not really. Let me get to my little notes here. So what they're talking about is when you create text here. I haven't used Illustrator recently, but I guess apparently there's a better way to sort things like by families and things like that. I don't really know. All I know is like you have the recent options, you have the used. This is like what's in your current document. And you have favorites, which I haven't used on this computer, but like you can tag things, I guess, for favorites. That's a favorite. So yeah, Anton would be my favorite. I could tag other things. The search capability, I think, just goes by the name. So if it was, you know, it's just the name. There's not much more than that. So I don't think you can actually group them by families or anything like that yet. So yeah, unfortunately, it's kind of a missing feature right now. Font management isn't as mature as it is in some other programs. So yeah, this is the question I talked about earlier, like what's new in the Affinity 2.5.5 update. There's not really much that's new. I think it's just a minor bug fix. Whenever you get like this third decimal place, like it's usually not major. It's just like bug fixes and things. Let me bring up the release notes here. I mean, I won't go through all of it, but I'm just kind of showing you that like there's the they do the posts here on the forums. If you search Google for it, they show up, but they kind of tell you what the new things are. I mean, when it's like a point, when it's at this level, that's like a major thing. But when it's at the sub-decimal point level, it's not much. Where's 2.5.5? Yeah, so this is the post for the 2.5.5 fixes, and it's just all bug fixes, as far as I know, which usually aren't that exciting. Unless you're suffering from the bug, in which case it's exciting. But yeah, it's just all minor stuff like that. So nothing too big, nothing that was like worth making a video on, I thought. So I got this question from someone, Mind Mulch, that says, suddenly the clone brush tool and the inpainting brush tool stopped working. He must have inadvertently altered the settings, but he can't figure out which ones. Yeah, typically what happens in this case is there's a couple kind of gotchas that happen. Let me open it up and let's just open up some random image. So a lot of times what happens is you're on a pixel layer above it and you select like the inpainting brush tool. And what the inpainting brush tool does is it can actually erase, it can fill in content. So if I select this, it'll fill in the windows. But if I do this right now, nothing happens. And the reason nothing happens is because this is one of those tools that has that setting. Whoops. That has the setting for, you can choose current layer or you can choose current layer and below. And this is a mistake I always make myself. Like you want to make sure if you're above your content layer, you want to make sure it says current layer and below. So I'll select this. And it's not going to look that great, but you know, it actually does something, right? I can erase part of the house maybe. Again, not the best image for this example, but you can see it's actually doing something, right? Whereas if you don't select that, if you have just set to current layer, which it is by default, nothing happens. The other thing that happens a lot is people, they'll do a brush to like paint something, I don't know what they'll paint. They'll paint something interesting. And then what happens is they set the setting for protect alpha. And protect alpha is really useful because what it does is it means you can't draw on transparent pixels anymore. So if I wanted to like change the color of this, like if I change yellow, maybe I just want to make this yellow, I can actually like just paint on this and it's just changing my color. It's just changing the pixels that are on my, that are there on this layer, right? So that's super cool. The problem is later on you create another pixel layer and you're like, okay, I want to draw something else and nothing is happening. The reason nothing's happening is because you can only paint on the pixels that exist and there's no pixels that exist on this layer. And you have protect alpha selected. So if you uncheck protect alpha, now I can actually, you know, draw stuff here. But this is a very common thing is that people forget they have protect alpha selected and then they go and they try to use the brush and it just doesn't work. So those are the two things that usually are the culprits. You forget to select current layer and below, or you have a brush selected and you don't have this protect alpha is selected and you're not able to paint on something. So I don't know if that's exactly what your problem is here, but my guess is like that's probably the first place I would look. And there's a couple tools where that's the case that this thing happens. So I got this question about image versus pixel layers. Is there a way to make a pixel layer to an image layer? Yeah, there is. I actually had to look it up after that video. So I have an image layer here, and to make it a pixel layer, it's quite simple. I can just right click on it and I can say rasterize. And now it's a pixel layer. The question is, can we make it back to an image layer? And the answer is yes. What you want to do is first like right click on it and just select copy so it's on the clipboard. And then you can actually select an option in the edit menu here. So I'm selecting edit and then paste special. And then I believe it is, which one is it? It's the device independent bitmap option here. So I'll select OK. And you can see now I pasted it as an image over here. So that's what happened there. So I'll do it one more time. So I just copied this, right click, copy, or do Control C. I do the mouse option so you can see it. Edit, paste special here. And then device independent bitmap, click OK. And you get it back as an image layer again. Just be sure that like, I think if this is like, you know, if you reduce the size and you mess this thing up or you made it like smaller size, your image is going to be smaller sized again. So, you know, you're not magically getting back quality if you lost it somewhere. So I got this question about, someone said they wanted to take a photo and convert it to the text frame like on the thumbnail. And how is that done? Whoops. So yeah, there's not an automatic way to do it. It's really just you just trace the image and then that's how you do it. So I'll show you briefly how to do it here. Let's see, just open up my demo file. So sometimes I make the thumbnail, oftentimes I make the thumbnail after I make the video, and I think of a better example when I make the thumbnail than I did in the video. And I think this is one of those cases. I should have used this in the video, but I didn't think of it till after I used another example in the video. But really the key here is just use the pen tool. So I'm selecting the pen tool, this option here. And how am I? Yeah, they're going to show up. And really you're just going to kind of click and drag the old-fashioned way. Nothing super sophisticated about it. I'll just do this really quickly. And you can modify it later because you have these nodes. They're modifiable. Whoops. I'll just go out here. And you can smooth them if you want to make it. It's probably not even really going to matter because it's just going to be based on the text anyway, and the text is going to have sharp edges. So I have this outline here. I can move it over to the side. And what I can say is I can say layer convert to text frame. So I have it converted to a text frame, okay? And then let me open up some text here. I have this text I I copied from online. I'm just gonna copy it. And then here I can press Control V. Whoops, and I have my text inside my my outline there. And really with this, this is one of those examples where the useful things aren't showing on the screen, because let me make it bigger just for a moment. Yeah, okay. So when I do this one, the option I really like is that you can see the different alignment options up here. And I think this last one is probably usually gives the best effects, justify left. So I'll click that. And it kind of fits it in a little bit better, I think. So if I toggle before, so this is the default alignment, and then this is the justify left. I think it fits the shape a little bit better. And then you can go and if you want, if you select the node tool, you can move your nodes. You know, it'll dynamically adjust it. You know, usually with this effect, it depends what you're going for, but if you want readability to matter, you know, you can adjust it. A lot of times you're just kind of creating a graphic where people aren't really supposed to read it. They're just supposed to see that it's made of text and think it looks cool. But if you actually care about readability, you know, you can try to get the words to look their best. You know, this is a Pride and Prejudice, I think. But yeah, and you can, let's bring this up here. Get a little bit going there. So there you go. So literally I just traced it with the pen tool. And then the key thing is that when I had that selection made, I did layer, convert to text frame here. And then you can paste your text in there. So there's no, I didn't use any auto tracing tool or anything like that. Just the old fashioned pen tool. So the last question. So I get this request a lot. Let me get this back here. And that is, can you turn photos into oil paintings or watercolor paintings or some other type of artistic effect? So I've looked into this and I may do a video on this, but right now there's not really one-click solution to this. And I would like there to be a one-click solution. Like most of the things I see now are manually taking a paintbrush and just putting strokes over your whole image. And I really would like to find some type of just menu option where you just click it and it works. And that's kind of what I would like to make a video on. So I'm trying to find a solution to that. You know, obviously it's not supported natively right now, but maybe there's plugins or something like that that can be used to do it, or maybe there's some procedural filters. So that's something I'm looking into. But yeah, I get this request a lot. I really wish it was supported, but it's not trivial right now. So Emmanuel, reading your question. Can you do a settings tutorial sometime, or the develop persona tutorial? In Photoshop, you get clean, crisp results, but in Affinity, you get muddy and dark pictures from raw images. What's wrong? Sure, I can do that. Yeah, I think probably the develop persona is what you're asking about. I have to brush up on it myself, but yeah, that's for those who don't know. There's the develop persona, and this is where you can adjust your raw images and things like that. So certainly I'll put that on my list. I've gotten some requests for that. I'm also toying with the idea of doing a longer Affinity Photo tutorial, since I got lots of requests for that. And I'm definitely gonna have to dive into the develop persona more to adequately, you know, serve that audience, because that's, you know, what they want when they use Affinity Photo. And that's the last question I have today. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes if you want to ask any more questions, like Emmanuel there. Thanks for your question, Emmanuel. Not sure what the topic will be next week, but we'll see. Yeah, segmentary GMIC. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, GMIC or whatever. That's exactly what I was thinking of. I have to look into it some more, but I've seen that it has some stuff. So maybe I'll do a tutorial on how to use that. That'd probably be very useful for many people. I have to teach myself some aspects of it too. But yeah, I'll look into that. But yeah, I'm also thinking about doing videos on some AI-based topics, specifically like no coding tools and some of these AI code generators, because that's something I'm quite interested in. And I do want to broaden topics out some more. Midjourney is something I use a lot, so I may be doing a video on like combining Midjourney with Affinity and how those two things can be used. So keep an eye out for that. Kevin, reading your comment, Art Rage is an app that can turn your art into a painting thing. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I would, I think I've heard of that too. So maybe that's a thing. That's a thing I can look at. No problem, Teak and Emmanuel. So if you guys don't have any other questions, I think I'll sign off for today. Thanks for joining me, everyone, and I will see you again next week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a good one.